Something you may have wondered as you were starting to use Nouveau is each of these steps in the step editing grid, what unit of time do each of these represent? So just a reminder here, going along the top, we have different track buttons and we can click on them to select that track. Once we have selected that track, that's what we're going to be editing in the step grid. However, in addition to what we're editing in the step grid, if you pull your attention down here to the bottom left where the config LCD is, you'll see that there are 4 buttons here to the left of the LCD, and this is selecting the groups of things that we are editing. Now, when you are in track mode, which is this second one here, the track button will not only select which steps you're editing, it will select which track settings you're editing. So you can look here in the top right of the LCD, it says track number 9 because we currently have track 9 selected. If I was to instead click on track number 5, you can see here that we're editing track number 5, number 1, etc. The main thing to note here is that once you are in track configuration mode, all of the settings that you see here will apply just to the track that you're looking at, and any of the settings that you see can be different for each of the tracks. So what I'm going to do here, I'll demonstrate this real quick. I'm going to hit invert, and we'll explain that later, to just create a whole bunch of steps. I'm going to do that on all 3 of these tracks. Now, if I was to hit play, you can see over here on the scope that they are all doing exactly the same thing. No surprise there. Now, we're going to come back to this, and I'm going to show you what these settings do as we go. So by default, the first setting that you'll see here is the random algorithm. To change which setting you're editing, there's these 2 buttons here. So clicking on either of them will allow you to go back and forth between different settings. And the one that you want to choose is one to the right, which says division. What division controls is the musical or rhythmic division for which each step in the sequence represents. And you see it here, it says a 16th. By default, all tracks are set to a 16th note. And if we click through, you can see that sure enough, all of these tracks are a 16th note. Now, this is the default, and the good news is that the overwhelming majority of drum machines throughout the history of electronic music have been in this, they've had a step division of a 16th note. Nouveau, however, allows you to change that. To change one of these values, there's these 2 values buttons here. So left will make it greater and right will make it smaller. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set track number 1 to be 1/4, which is 1/4 or a quarter note. We'll go to track 2, and you can see as I changed to the track, it not only changed which track I'm editing here, it's changing the value. I'll put track 2 on an 8th note, and then we will leave track 3 on a 16th note. Now I'm going to hit play and watch what happens over here on the oscilloscope. So you can now see that each of these steps, even though we have exactly the same pattern, you can see track 1, 2, and 3 is an identical pattern. You can see that even though the step pattern is the same, we are getting completely different outputs because what we've done is we have changed the division. And in fact, if you look closely, you can see that these are all in synchronization with each other. They're all divisions. They're all half divisions of each other as we go down. Now, one thing I want to point out here, it might be a little hard to see because of where the steps are, but you can see right here on the 4th row, column number 9, is where track number 1's cursor is at. If we instead jump over to track number 2, you can see it's over here, it's in a different place, and then track number 3, it's over here in a different place. Now what's going on is that because we changed the division, we changed the frequency with which each of these patterns will be repeating. So this one, you can see that the cursor is actually moving quite fast. Because each of these steps represent a 16th note, it's going to go through all 64 of these steps much quicker than the other ones. If we go over here to track number 2, you can see we're moving along at a steady pace, roughly half of what track number 3 is at. And then likewise here on number 1, you can see that this is moving much slower. So this gives you an idea of what each of those do. This really is an essential of setting up interesting rhythmic sequences.